Hello, good afternoon. Jai Hind, my dear loving children. Hope you're all fine, you're all safe, and staying back at home preparing for your class 10 boards. You are studying meticulously, isn't it? Because the time is less and we don't know what your boards are going to decide. So let us not keep any backlogs. Carry on with your preparations as we teach in the online class, in this virtual class. Children, today I'll be teaching you a very interesting story from your literature section. And the story is Footprints Without Feet by H.G. Wells. Children, it's a very interesting story which says that you remember one proverb which we have learned all in our childhood days, that science is a bad master but a good slave. We should use science as a boon but not as a bane, isn't it? What is the gist? It is that the science should be used for the sake of the humanity, for the benefits of the humanity, not to destroy or not to become a threat for the mankind. Yes, do you agree with me? I think all of you would agree, and please start writing yes in my chat box so that I can see that you all agree with me. This chapter, it deals about a scientist named Griffin. Now, Griffin used to discover, he had discovered, rather, I should say, that he had discovered a drug, dawai, a drug which would make a person invisible. Right? So one day, Griffin, what he did, he swallowed that drugs and he became transparent. He opened his clothes and he became transparent. Now, as I said, that science should be used for the benefits of the mankind. But generally, when man gets power, what he thinks, that he should take revenge of all people who had done wrong to him, or he would become the boss of the world, isn't it? He would show all his powers. So did Griffin. As he became transparent, as he became as transparent as a glass, he went to his landlord and he took the revenge. And one by one, there are many incidents where we would see that Griffin misused science. Children, many of you there back at your home, you may aspire to become a scientist, isn't it? But always have a motive to discover something or go for research on some topic which would be a benefit to the mankind, not a threat. Science, you can see the development of science in medicine. You can see the development of science in so many various kinds where we are benefited. You can see development of science which becomes a threat to the mankind. How? The discovery of the weapons, the arms, the ammunitions, which are just acquired to become the powerful. to show the power on the others. So let us not do it. Children, not wasting much time, let me start my chapter. So please do open your textbooks. If you're not having your textbooks by now, I think you're having your textbooks. But if you don't, I'll be sharing the PDF of the chapter, right? And what do I do next? I would connect you to my PPT. So everybody switch on over your phone to the landscape mode. Those who are using the mobile phones as their tool. So the chapter name is Footprints Without Feet by Herbert George Wells. First we start with some informations about the author. Now children, about the author is important because I want you to know all the authors, all the poets whom you are studying, those whose creations you are studying in your class 10 standard. This won't come in your examination, right? So about the author, Herbert George Wells, he was born in 21st September 1866, and he left us in 13th of August 1946. He was an English writer, children. He was a prolific in many genres, in writing dozens of novels, short stories, and the works of social commentary, satire, biography, and autobiography, and even to books on recreational war games. He is now best remembered of his science fiction novels and is often called the father of science fiction, along with Julius Verne and Hugo James Buck. So these informations are just to give you some knowledge, a bit of knowledge about the author or the poet we are learning. Right, children? This you don't have to learn. This is just for your general knowledge. Now, what is the morale of the chapter? Each and every chapter teaches us something, isn't it? And what do? We learn this moral and try to shape our soul, our spirit accordingly, isn't it? And what do? Another thing, most important thing, we do write this moral in the cover page of our literature notebooks, isn't it? So, a genuine scientist works for the good of humanity, children. This is what I told you, that if anyone sitting back at your home, you aspire to be a scientist, please work genuinely for the good of humanity. Now, a genuine scientist believes in making human lives more comfortable, easier, and pleasurable. He does not misuse his inventions for his selfish motive or personal gains. Selfish motives means anything it can be. It can be the to have the power to dominate others or to take the revenge or so many other things, etc. and etc. Right. Now, what is the introduction? Already I've given you a wonderful introduction, and I think all of you are now, you're all interested and waiting eagerly for the chapter to roll on, isn't it? The story Footprints Without Feet describes the story of a brilliant scientist, and the name of the scientist is Griffin, who degenerated himself into a lawless person. Griffin discovered that the human body could become transparent and invisible. But, children, he misused his great discovery. Did you get it? So, he could have used it for the benefit, for the sake of this humanity. But what he did, he used it for satisfying his selfish ends, misusing his discovery. Now, the character sketch. This is very important. We'll get introduced to the characters which are there in the chapter. First is Griffin. I think by now you have come to know who is Griffin. He is the eccentric scientist. Eccentric means mad scientist who makes himself invisible. He does not hesitate to resort to criminal activities to remain a mystery. Mystery means because he won't be seen by the people, isn't it? So it would be a mystery that who is doing that? Who is doing all the nuisance? Who's creating all the nuisance? Because he'll be invisible. So remaining a mystery, he resorted to carry out all the criminal activities. Right? The next is Mrs. Hall. She is the resolute but superstitious owner of the inn at Iping where Griffin stays. The next character is of Mr. Jaffers. He is a dutiful policeman who fails to arrest the invisible scientist. Now, overview of the chapter. Overview means I've just sorted the chapter with the main incidents. According to the incidents, the flow of incidents in the chapter, I've arranged this overview of the chapter, right? So, boys see the footprints in the street. Two boys on a street in London were surprised to see fresh, muddy footprints of bare feet on the steps of a house without finding who was making them. Now, any one of you have enjoyed the movie Mr. India? Did you see? The person was invisible, only the steps or only the uh, activities, the results of the activities which he was doing could be visible. So, in the same way, Griffin was not visible, and only the footprints on the wet mud were visible. Those footprints had been made by Griffin, an eccentric scientist who had discovered how to make his body transparent. He could only be seen by the clothes he was wearing. So he had removed the clothes also. Now, Griffin is a lawless plus person. Griffin was having a criminal bent of mind and was a lawless person. He set fire to his landlord's house to take revenge against him for trying to evict him. To get away, he had to remove his clothes so that he can become invisible. He was a homeless wanderer in London without clothes or money during the winter. Now, escape by Griffin. Griffin managed to escape children from the two keen boys' observation and entered unseen into a big store to get some warm water or to become warm. After the store was closed at night, children, what happened? Griffin put on some new clothes, consumed meat, coffee from the restaurant in the store, and went to sleep on a pile of quilts. What is quilts? Blankets. He overslept and only woke up when the shop had opened and the assistant had arrived. On being seen and chased by them, he again took off his clothes so that they could not see him. See how very scruffy he became. Griffin at the theatrical company. Then Griffin entered a theater, theatrical company, giving items used in plays. Children, there he wore bandages to outline his face, dark glasses, a false nose, and bushy side whiskers. Whiskers means mustaches. He robbed the shopkeeper of his money and escaped to a village away from London to avoid being caught. Griffin arrives at Iping village. Now, Griffin, what happened, children? He booked two rooms at an inn. Inn is which is a transformed form now today's hotel, resting place. Okay, belonging to Mrs. Hall in the village Iping. He explained to her that he had an accident and did not want to be disturbed. As Mrs. Hall tried to be social with him, soon his money was finished, so he robbed a clergyman's house by using his invisibility. Understood, children? Are you there? Are you enjoying? Yes or no? Mrs. Hall enters Griffin's house. That same day, children, when Mrs. Hall found Griffin's room open with his bandages and clothes lying around, she and her husband entered the room. Suddenly, both of them were attacked by a furniture being flung on them. Flung means being thrown on them. But they could not see who was doing this because he was invisible. He had again opened his clothes. Mrs. Hall felt that the furniture was haunted by spirits as she could not see Griffin. Griffin becomes invisible and escapes from Iping. When the clergyman reported the burglary to the police, most people in the village felt that strange scientist had a hand in it because he paid his due rent, whereas earlier he was not able to do so. So Mrs. Jaffers, the village, I'm sorry, Mr. Jaffers, yes, Mr. Jaffers, the village police constable, was called to arrest Griffin children. And why he was arrested? On suspicion. He, they suspected him. It was not proved. Meanwhile, Mrs. Hall asked Griffin to explain all the unusual happenings. Griffin lost his temper and decided to tell all. He started from removing his clothes, and even Jaffers could not catch someone whom he could not see. He was knocked unconscious by the invisible man who escaped. Now, children, we will come to the chapter highlights. Coming to the end, this is what we do usually. Two boys on a London street were surprised to see fresh muddy footprints of bare feet without finding who was making them. These footprints had been made by Griffin, an eccentric scientist who had discovered how to make his body transparent to get away after he had burnt his landlord's house down. He had to remove his clothes so that he can become invisible. Griffin entered unseen into a big store to get warm. When the store was closed at night, he put on new clothes, consumed meat and coffee from the restaurant, and went to sleep on a pile of pills. He overslept and was seen by the shop assistants. In the morning, he again took off his clothes to escape them. Then he entered a theatrical company and wore bandages on his face, dark glasses, a false nose, a bushy side whiskers. Whiskers means mustaches. He robbed the shopkeeper of his money and escaped to Iping village by train to avoid being caught. See how very scrupulous the person is. He rented two rooms at an inn in the village. He explained to Mrs. Hall, its owner, that he had met with an accident and did not want to be disturbed. Soon his money was finished, and so he robbed a clergyman's house by using his invisibility. That same day, when Mrs. Hall entered his room, she and her husband were attacked by the furniture. This made Mrs. Hall think that it was haunted by spirits. When the clergyman reported the burglary to the police, what happened, children? Griffin was suspected of having a hand in it. Why? Because he was not able to pay the rent of his house. And quickly he was serving all his responsibilities. So the village constable, Jaffers, came to arrest on suspicion. Meanwhile, Mrs. Hall asked Griffin to explain all the unusual happenings. Griffin lost his temper and took off his clothes, thus becoming invisible, and knocked Jaffers unconscious and ran away. He fled from here also. So, with this, what do? We complete the chapter, and I hope you have enjoyed the class. And what do we do next? I'll be sharing the PDF. You will be going through the extra questions, and you will be completing your notebooks. How do we complete your notebooks? By solving the text question and answers exercises. Right, children? So, till then, goodbye. Be safe. Be positive.